And to screw it up less next time, although we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing this up. And welcome to a Super Bowl Sunday edition of the This Week in Worcester podcast. I am Tom Marino, host, editor of This Week in Worcester. This is Mr. John Edward Keogh. He is a contributor to This Week in Worcester. He is executive producer of Managing Media. He is the president of Hollywood Film Group. He is Mr. John Edward Keogh.
That's me.
If you are not participating in the most watched sporting event or most watched single event of the year, every year for the last 1 billion years, here we are. Some things happening in the city. We're going to start with the school committee this past Tuesday. John, I watched this meeting. I don't know if you were able to, but I did, and kind of infuriating.
I did. I've actually watched it since. I was able to catch up. Hold on. I just was sending all our counter programming out to all the various channels out there in the world. Yeah, I was able to watch it. I think. We're not just you, but there's been other people that are covering this. I would say that before we get into the specifics, there is a general push from the powers that be to make moves all over the city, whether it's on the school committee or the city council, some development stuff, a lot of maneuvering pieces behind closed doors. Normal Worcester, 40, 50, 60 years of doing business. It's hard to change habits. And what you're going to talk about is it looks like, to me, that there was a closed door meeting of some kind. Maybe there was quorum not made, or maybe was made, and there was an attempt at a counter proposal, and we saw kind of things that happen in Worcester on a regular basis, where someone tried to make a legitimate, proposal, regardless of whether you agree with the language of that proposal. It was legitimate, and then it was undercut by a clearly preordained move. Clearly and distinctly, and I know a lot of the people involved, and it doesn't matter if you agree, that was underhanded. And so that this is where we're at. It is what it is.
Yeah. So a statement that was introduced by council member Sue Mailman was specifically declaring that the school system would protect folks within LBGTQIA plus communities, and was watered down to basically include every group you can possibly consider in the world. And so, I mean, other people have said this, but it was kind of obvious. I mean, I think member of the school committee, Alvarez, said it in the meeting. They took an all lives matter on this resolution. Now let's just explain this real quickly for people that might. It's really not complicated. For people that may not understand. Okay, there was a whole. We've all heard Black Lives Matter before. When you scream in response to that, all lives matter, like you're making a point that not only Black Lives Matter, obviously, but there was a moment in time there where people were trying to have a conversation specifically about people who were experienced either violence and sometimes death at the hand of state violence, right? So they're trying to have a very specific conversation, and what you do is, by screaming "All Lives Matter" at it, is you're trying to either change the conversation or water it down into something that is different from the conversation these people are trying to have, right? And what you're saying is maybe not intended, but I think often it is. We're not going to have that conversation because we're suddenly anti-racism everywhere. And it would be racist to have a conversation. It's the dumbest thing. So just stop trying to change the conversation, right? And so when somebody says that this was an all lives matter approach to this resolution, it was because it turned what was a conversation about something very specific, a specific community of people and the threats that they face in this moment, and turned it into, we love everybody. It's cool to love everybody. Nobody, the number of people who don't think that all lives matter or think that only Black Lives Matter is extremely small, right? Extremely small. So I don't know why this is so complex for some people. It shouldn't be. What you're doing is trying to change the conversation. We're aware, right? We do care about all people. We want people to be happy and healthy and not hurt. No kidding. But we're trying to have a specific conversation. And for those who, for whatever reason, religious or otherwise, don't like, gay people or trans people or whatever, however you want to break that down, you're welcome to have that opinion. I don't know if it's welcome, but you certainly have the right to have that opinion.
Can I address that real quick?
I'm literally one more sentence. But
yeah,
when people in your community, regardless of who they are targeted from the federal level, you shouldn't be surprised when those people then go to their local government and say, we're being targeted. Can you maybe even say something about that? And they should, because these are people in our community, and they're going to their local government because they feel the federal government is at best not serving them, at worst targeting them.
Right.
It was more than one sentence, but I'm done.
No, it's okay. So I want to address it from the perspective of the faith community, I guess, right? So I'm a Christian man. I believe in Jesus. I go to church. I serve at my church. I also serve part-time at a local Christian denomination. I'm actually wearing the sweatshirt right now. Most people particularly in the what I would say the mainstream media, assume that folks like me would immediately not support some petition like this, right? But there's a couple things that should be addressed towards, I guess, members of my fellow faith community. One, these resolutions have no legally binding impact. They're statements about whether you care about one group or not. Realistically, the proposal that committee member Mailman put forth was a short document. It wasn't like this long-winded thing, just saying that there is an affirmation by the school committee, this group of members, leaders that supposedly are involved in, what the school is going on, to support this very small group of people who feel at this time, whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. At this time, they feel attacked. They feel, harm coming their way, and they're expressing that as a community. Committee member Mailman didn't come up with this idea out of nowhere. It's based on some of the statements that we see at the federal level and at the state level, and then also, at the local level. There's a lot of stuff online here in this community that's just pure hatred. It doesn't matter your opinion on whether you agree with what somebody does, whether you agree they chose it or they were born that way, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that as a municipality, there are two avenues, realistically, to express community thought. And it happens, and one's the school committee, that's for school-related stuff, and one's the city council. And that's for, I guess, non-school-related stuff, although sometimes they overlap. And you had a community group that approached one of their elected representatives and asked to have this thing here. And then what I would say is, as a Christian man, what was done to them was divisive and was dishonest. And so if you are a member of the faith community that stands against the original proposal, fine. Why couldn't the original proposal be voted on? And then if you feel you need to express your opinion to your elected representative of how you would like them to vote. But that's not what happened here. What happened here was a dishonest and clearly preordained determination to manipulate the text that was presented. It doesn't matter. Again, your opinion means nothing in the real sense of it at all. If you feel like if you support someone who happens to be a trans person, that God is going to strike you down, man, you're reading a different book than I'm reading, and you're going to a different church than I'm going to, because I don't know that that's what it says. But if you feel that way, why do you have to do it in a manipulative, dishonest way? That makes no sense. You make no sense. You're saying something that is completely disconnected from the faith you say you supposedly represent. In this case, why wouldn't you care for those folks and give them the same opportunity that you have to express in a public setting? I get the chance on Tom's show, with Manny's show, with my companies, and on the city council floor all the time to express my opinion and express the things that I think about. Why can't the same be said for a very small group of people who are currently experiencing terrible fear? Why wouldn't you want them to be able to say that? How does it affect you that you have to go behind closed doors and make a backroom deal, which is clearly what happened?
Yeah, and I would just add to that, like, regardless of what you feel about, people's life choices, uh, I mean, when there's an executive order that says that a certain very small part of the LGBTQIA community literally doesn't exist. There's an executive order that says trans people don't exist. That's what it says. You should, regardless of not being part of that group, it was a group you were part of. Incessant flag wavers community. Irish people, Italian people, whatever it might be, whatever group that you think that you're a part of, religious, your religion or your denomination within your religion, whatever it might be. I'm sure you can understand that, when the president of the United States says that you don't exist, that's kind of threatening, right?
It's rough.
And so I would just say, maybe side with your neighbors instead of, or try to at least have some empathy for the feeling of your neighbors over, some culture war being waged at the federal level.
The thing that and this is, of course, puts me in the minority in my own faith community, I guess, at a global level versus maybe some local folks who might agree with me, is that there's like a persecution complex that exists in the nation for Christians. Like, it's very, very strange, because this is the one place on earth where we're really not persecuted, right? So, like, you're able to go to church every single day if you want to. Literally, in the city of Worcester, there's over 200 churches active of various denominations in the Christian world, and so they all meet on almost every single day of the week. If you really truly wanted to, you could be within that community and live very openly all the things that you want to express that you think are important to you. And so there's this one area where maybe there's other points of view, and that's persecution. I can't see that, right? That doesn't make sense to me, because again, I'm able to do things very, very openly and very, very freely. And again, it doesn't matter. My opinion does not matter in the situation where another person who happens to be different than me is expressing their feelings about how they feel. It doesn't matter what I think, Tom. My opinion shouldn't be the thing that is now needs to be expressed on a resolution. The opinion that matters is the person who is expressing fear and not being believed that they're real, or that they're how do you tell someone that says to you, I feel this way, no, you don't feel that? How do you do that? Like, I don't get it. It doesn't make sense to me. Even if you think that feeling that the person says that they're feeling is wrong, that doesn't matter either, because they just told you how they felt. It doesn't mean anything to me. It only matters how I treat the person. So now in front of me, I'm seeing a human being who says, I would prefer, John, that you use this name for me. And I would prefer, John, that you use this set of pronouns for me. And John, I would prefer if you would let me express myself in public that I feel uncomfortable. How those three things, those basic level things, offend people so much that they have to do everything they can to suppress it? It doesn't make sense. And so again, I just don't get it. It doesn't work in my mind. Maybe I'm a different cat, so I guess I view things in a different way. But again, I think committee member Mailman put together a pretty succinct document. It didn't have any like secret coded language that was gonna somehow change the curriculum of the city school. And again, we live in Massachusetts too, Tom. We have the right to opt out of a class. If you think that you don't want some particular thing being taught to your kid, you can opt out in this state. You can do so many things to really guide what you think is happening to your children. You also have the right to go to any school you want. There's charter schools all over the place. There's religious schools all over the place. There's no preventing you from going away from something that you disagree with. Nothing's stopping you from that. There's no wall. And so why is it that this is where you feel you need to take your stand? I just don't get it. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, agreed. And similarly,
just from a real quick, I'm sorry, last, from a religious perspective, as a man of Jesus, I'm supposed to draw people to Jesus through the way that I live. So if this particular act pushes people away, then I'm not being Christian, right? And that's clearly what is happening here. You're not drawing anybody. People are afraid to go to church today. They're afraid, and rightfully so, because there's been terrible behavior by church leaders for hundreds and hundreds of years. And I'm not even talking about the crimes against children. I'm just talking about stealing money, lying, cheating, being involved with political manipulations, yada 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 yada, at every single denomination and every single religion around the world. It's been like that for centuries and centuries. So why would you also want people to feel uncomfortable when you walk into a place? Don't you want to be embraced by people? Don't you want them to care about you too? And that's what I think that's where I guess I disconnect from the practice versus the particular precept that someone might believe in. It doesn't connect logically. And so then I start to think, if it's not logical, it's probably not from who I believe is God. Right? So if that's my center of understanding, which different people feel different things, it can't be logical if it's abusive and attacking. It doesn't make sense.
And then similarly, over in the city council, there is a citizen resolution that asks for the city council to declare Worcester a sanctuary city for trans folks. And that was held by Councilor Clorio. Councilor Bergman said he would have held it if she did not first, for some legal clarification over the definition of sanctuary city and could that potentially put federal funding in jeopardy. There's no legal reason for that. Sanctuary city, it's not a legal term. It's a descriptive term for a set of police policies related to cooperating with federal immigration enforcement. So I thought the hold was a little silly, but at the same time, and this goes back to the effectiveness of our city council. It is the agenda comes out on Friday, and you didn't have the answer to that question by Tuesday. You knew this was no later than Friday. This was known to be on, and there was no preparation time to figure out if this was a thing. It's silly. I mean, they couldn't. What happens between Friday and Tuesday? Do these people prepare now? But then again, you have to add the caveat that this is a part-time job, and all these people work other jobs.
But so
we don't care. We don't really care about being represented in the city.
Sure, but they also ran for the position, right? They also ran for it. So if you run for the position, knowing that it's a part-time job, knowing that you're going to have to work at the job, why not do it to the best of your ability? That doesn't make sense. So if you build in the excuse, hey, it's a part-time thing and I just don't have enough, then why did you run? Then why did you run? Don't run then.
I mean, they don't have any power anyway, right? And that's the thing about these resolutions, like
they voted their own power away.
Well, yeah, in a lot of cases, right? In that there's no legal anything to this. This is just a statement saying, this group within our community that's under attack, we support them, right? And that actually means a lot to some people, when they feel under attack because nobody else is there for them, right? Again, if you're a trans person right now and the president just issued an executive order that says you don't exist, that's probably quite frightening. I can understand that being quite frightening. And so that they go to their local government and looking for some assurance that, their local government will protect them and doesn't think that they don't exist. That seems perfectly natural to me. It seems, So the interesting thing is, as many people probably know, the mayor is the chair of the school committee and the chair of city council. Now, on Tuesday, he said that he would support the resolution that was before city council, indicating he was going to vote for it on this coming Tuesday, that he would vote for it this coming Tuesday. Yet on Thursday, he voted with, most other councilors besides Alvarez and Mailman, to change and water down and make sure that the schools didn't make this statement of, care and concern for folks in the LBGTQIA community. So it'd be interesting to see what happens Tuesday. I don't know if that's a foreshadowing of a shift in position.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'll also say this. I've recently both Councilor Russell and Mayor Petty have gone on multiple local media things and talked about the concern of getting back to business for the city, right? That we want to push past in both, and they specifically mentioned the school committee and the city council talking about issues not related to Worcester, right? And then included Council Russell included allusions to this resolution being debated in the school committee, and so that's an interesting thing. I think that's an interesting thing that they're saying that there's work that they need to be done, that they need to do, and I wonder what that work is, right? Because generally speaking, I've heard them both make proposals about things that have nothing to do with anything at all. And do you know what I do know? Because I drive around the city of Worcester, I do know that the speed limit proposal that was put through and was massively important, that the chief of police just announced that they're not going to enforce it because they didn't have the recruiting class that they wanted, right? So they're not going to enforce it through the winter, basically because they have to deal with other things that are more important to enforce in that time, and they don't have enough staff. Chief of police's public statement. There's still potholes in the city. The people who do the snow plowing for us are clearly ripping us all off. It's really blatantly obvious. And there's a bunch of other structural things wrong with the city. Let's not even get started with housing still being an issue, the distrust between the community and the police still being an issue, and then the litany of things that are wrong with the city. That doesn't even get to some of the commercially like the comically surface level stuff that they like to do, like the thing with the media booth at the city council thing. By the way, I noticed that was changed already. Right? So, yeah, it was like adjusted a little bit. I don't know. And I also know that the law department hasn't responded yet to the brief, the text of the brief, where the same exact thing was done in another town in Massachusetts, and whether or not that had opened them to what's called deliberate indifference. The city was provided with information by me, both a case that had been recently decided and a Supreme Court case. And so I wonder if the law department is going to continue to uphold what I think is a blatantly unconstitutional move. But that's okay. Those are just like the basic stuff. So I want to see what things are so important. If we can't talk about these community level things that folks feel that they need to express, what exactly what exactly are Mayor Petty and George and Council Russell talking about? What resolutions are we going to hear that are so essential that these things shouldn't be heard? And we need to limit public. I hear a lot of this: limiting public comment, creating a shorter time for people to talk, putting a motion on there to put a scoreboard up, basically, so people can see when their time is up, and make sure that they have to indicate the time. Are they going to connect the microphone to that? Like, so it's like 2 minutes, microphone cuts off. A lot of concern by the city council, or at least some members of the city council, about limiting public interest in the city council and getting back to work. So what work are they talking about is what I want to know.
Maybe it's giving a charter more access, charter communications more access, or Spectrum more access to anything they want in the city without discussion, without any actual information. We want to put a poll here, and there's no for what. It's just like it's this. It goes here. It's this is the exact location it'll be. Well, what's it for? Don't know. Not in a document.
And by the way, I don't know if you know, but Spectrum has had some rolling outages the past couple months. So are those polls going to fix those outages, or what's going on? What are you guys doing? And by the way, they pushed through one community member did put on this Tuesday's petition. I intend to go to City Hall and speak on it. That charter pushed through another price increase, by the way, without notice to the city, in the middle of negotiations with the city. Again, Spectrum is openly negotiating with you by telling you that they do not care about you, to the mayor and to the city manager. They pushed through another, I think it was $4.25 increase onto everybody's bill this past month. So which is hilarious when you think about it. They're just right in your face, just slapping you like, yeah, we don't care what you think. And there's nothing that the city's doing about it. But is that the work they're going to get back to? Are they going to start talking about it? Remember, they voted 11-0 to hold the city manager accountable, I think 9 months ago. And there has not been a breath on that work in the past 9 months. And I'm sure they'll say, well, we've been dealing with all these other issues, so we didn't have time to talk about it. Right? I don't think so, Tommy.
Yeah, so no, of course not. And what's it like? Is it connected to like a resident who needs it, right? Or is it just like to extend their network and make them more money? But I'd like to know that, because I think that should have a tremendous effect on how it's voted on, especially when they do things like this.
If it's one of the ones where it says open the box, they can't dig in the ground to do any repairs unless they get a vote from the city council. And so the interesting thing is, only one time in the past 13 years has one of those proposals ever been held. And it was the night that I went and Councilor Presidio had put my petition back on, the one that they had denied me, about asking the city manager to provide the report related to the negotiations. And they voted 11-0. And that night, Councilor Toomey and Councilor Bergman each held one of the poll openings, but then they released that hold the following week.
Yeah, I heard something about one of those that were held was somebody who was transitioning from working on site to working at home, and that hold actually held up their being able to work for a week, and they, of course, were very upset about that. And I guess there's I don't know if it was one of those you're specifically referencing to, but that allegedly happened in one of these orders that were held. Yeah. And and then now folks are gun shy to do anything, and it's just like, well, you could just say that they're going to tell you what it's for.
Yeah, because they don't tell you it just says open the box. And by the way, I that specific situation, it turns out that person was not telling the truth, because their cable was connected the same day as the petition was on there, and they said that, and there was an investigation into that specific thing. And during the negotiations, the attorney for the city checked into that specific complaint because Spectrum brought it up, and it turns out that was not true. That person had internet, and I know that the city councilor in question has repeated that story now multiple times without evidence. And again, every time I bring up something that's questionable, there's multiple councilors who will call me a liar, literally on the council floor or behind closed doors. But when they're proven to be wrong, they'll never, ever say sorry for being dishonest. But that person in particular that complained, Tom, was not telling the truth.
Interesting. I don't think, and just for the record, I don't think anybody's called you a liar on the floor.
Yeah, actually, Counselor Toomey did. When I wrote the drone story, she said that I was a liar. And she said that it wasn't true, that there was a second drone, and that I did not, in fact, have the information. And then, of course, the following week, I presented Chris Williams, who's the owner of Cloud City Drone. I presented all the documents from his company that he had received from the city. And then the city solicitor released to me the public records related to the drone story. Counselor Toomey has never apologized, and she did. In fact, it's on the record. I have a video of her calling me, John Edward Keel, a liar. We've talked about this several times. But she'll never admit that she did that, and she'll never admit that she's talked about me behind my back multiple times. I just don't, always bring it up. But in this particular case, I know everything, and I know all the people she said it to. And she's more than welcome to call me on the cell phone that I gave away to people. Yet another thing that she lied about me. So we can go down those roads all day long. I keep all the receipts. I'm always available to talk about it. And I'm not upset about it. It's just that sometimes people go down that road because they respond without thinking, and just think that someone's against them because we're saying or bringing up something that questions them. They're very sensitive on the city council. Yes. If you question anything, they will immediately go after you and start calling you names within 5 seconds. And so in this particular, I've been called a liar a bunch of times, but in this case, Councilor Toomey called me a liar to my face while I was standing at the podium on the council floor.
Oh, well, I'm talking about the councilor who has led the public safety committee for 9 years and has never, ever issued an order that asks anything of the police department related to its different discipline processes. Never reviewed a document. Never had anything on its agenda related to that. And that counselor's response to that, of course, is, well, things have to be sent to us. Well, they do, but you could also introduce them, since you are apparently the resident expert on city council about public safety, especially the police department, because you represent them and them alone.
In relation to that story, just to stick with the drone story, former Chief of Police Steve Sargent got to the podium on at least 4 different occasions and lied about the drone program. Said that they had never been training for it, that they had never heard about it until City Manager Augustus brought it up and switched the funding from the dogs to the drone, and continued to lie for almost 6 or 7 months until I brought up the story and found the public records that proved him to be a liar, and then was able to go in and take pictures of the drones and show them to everybody else. Councilor Toomey was recommended by multiple councilors to bring that up in committee, and has never ever investigated the fact that the former chief of police stood in the dock and lied openly with information. There's emails that he knew about it, that he was involved with the sale, the training, the purchase in relation to the drones as far back as 2016. And the law department didn't go back before that when I asked for the public records request, because the amount of money that I paid for that request didn't cover going back further than 2016. But they didn't indicate that there weren't more records, so it could have been gone back even further than that. But I just accepted what I had, and at that point I had enough to release the story at the time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's more of the same from the city council.
But nothing's changed. But we're making progress, right? That's what.
On what I don't know, but we're making progress. Yeah.
I don't know. Mayor Petty said in 2015 that we're on the right track. Right? We're on the right track. And
he also said in 2014 that there were going to be public meetings about complaints about the police department that never happened.
Oh wow, that's in 11 years. That's never happened, man. Has any of the local media, other than us, and Bill Shane or Manning, held the mayor accountable for no public meetings in 11 years since he promised? Has anybody else?
Well, here's the thing, though. So here's the thing, is that to have those meetings that the council passed an order on a month ago, was January 7th, I believe.
Yeah.
That has to actually be scheduled and set up by somebody within the administration, because the council can't do that on its own and doesn't have the budget to do that on its own, because that council's, the people that we actually elect to represent us are hamstring themselves intentionally on almost everything. So I don't know if it's the lack of asking the administration to do it, or the administration waffling on doing it. I have no information. I have no idea what the problem is.
I just want to know if any of the voters for Mayor Petty ever hold him accountable for saying things that never happened. That, you know what I mean, in 11 years. I don't know. Is that a problem for them? Are they okay? Is saying something and having it never happen in 11 years the kind of leadership that we want in the city of Worcester? I don't know. I mean, that's to me an open question. I mean, do any of you that listen, and I know there's all kinds of pro mayor voters in our that watch our show on a regular basis. Do you ever hold the mayor accountable for saying things that don't happen?
I just and this goes well beyond the city manager or the mayor alone. It just, when are we going to take this issue seriously?
Yeah, I mean, how about any issue, Tom? For example, what about Madison Properties pulling out of the deal at Polar Park, then buying another parcel when they said they had not enough capital? That was their specific press release. We don't have the capital to cover this potential project. There was no consequences for them, and then they magically found millions of dollars to invest in the Holy Cross parcel only a few weeks later, and there's been zero accountability from both the city manager and the mayor. When's there going to be public accountability for things they say there's going to be public accountability for? How does it look? Is it always closed door conversations? When are the public comments going to be directed against people who do things against the people of the city of Worcester from our leadership? And when are the voters, those of you, because this is on the voters, Tom, when are the voters going to hold them accountable for lying to us? All the time. You know, everybody says, hey, all politicians lie. Okay, fine, they do. I agree. When are we going to hold them accountable for that?
Yeah, right.
When?
People, never mind politicians, people lie. But I mean, if you don't do anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, because I got to tell you, when I lied when I was a kid, Tom, I got whooped. So I got held accountable pretty quick, man. And listen,
please, nobody take it upon themselves to whoop any city council.
I'm not saying to whoop the mayor, right? He's a grown man. He doesn't need to have a whooping. But I, by the way, it was my mom that was whooping me. My mom, listen, you know, my dad was, a big dude, and he could wreck a kid. But my mom's whoopings were pretty rough, man. She used to take, took me down a couple times. Hey, actually, a funny story. One time in a shoe store when I was like 15 or 16, it was in a shoe store, and I had gum, and I took the gum out and I put it on a box or something, or like in the store, and my mom saw me do that, and I was 15 years old, and at the time I was the same height that I am now, same basic, same size, and my tiny little Irish mom proceeded to destroy me. Like nobody's business, and she made me take that gum off the box and bring it out of the store and put it in the trash can. And I mean, oh man, it was so good. I can't even be mad about it because I was bigger than her, and she just annihilated me. And what are you gonna say? It's so good. I think it was like a Payless. It was probably a Payless. Oh, man.
So that is that. We'll see what happens on Tuesday when that resolution, because it was held, it will be back this week, and I would imagine likely to be voted on. Although, who really knows? Also want to talk about John picked out an order from the upcoming city council meeting brought by Councilor Bergman, and I'm just gonna read it. It's 10A on the agenda for Tuesday, whatever the date is, 11th. 10A says that the City Council shall henceforth follow MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A1, ensuring that any discussion regarding any City Council relative to A, an individual's character, reputation, mental health, or physical condition, or B, complaints, charges, or discipline against a public employee, officer, or staff member occur only in executive session. And I have one response to this. How about no?
How about no? It's right. So first of all, let's just deal with Section 21. It says a public body may meet. Councilor Bergman's order says they have to follow that as if it must always happen. And, Tom and I were talking before the show. I found this order to be very interesting because this really goes back to the very significant issue. Two prongs. One, there is no real legal advice for the city council outside of the city manager's own attorney, who works for the city manager at the behest of the city manager, right? So the city solicitor works for the city manager. And currently,
and has, just let me insert this, has an ethical responsibility to represent their client.
The city manager, not the city manager. So,
well, that's not really the administrative branch, the organization within government, the organization that runs the city government that is headed by
the city manager. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is not his personal attorney, but represents that part of government.
Right.
Does not represent the city council.
Right. And the city council wants to ask for legal advice. They have to either vote to hire like an attorney for the moment and pay and figure out how to pay for that, or they have to ask the city manager's attorney. And so if there's a conflict between the two, right, there's going to be this advice that's given that may or may not represent what the city council's interests are. Okay. And the city council's interests are supposed to be the constituents that they represent. So sometimes the city administration and the city people have differing interests, right? I don't know if people realize that or not, but the people might not always agree with how the administration administers the government, as we see with the conflicts between people all over the city. So in this particular case, Councilor Bergman's order indicates that in all occasions that some kind of accusation, the reputation, the character, physical condition, mental health of an individual shall be taken offline into an executive session. Now, Councilor Bergman often represents himself as an attorney on the council floor, and that he has an understanding of the law. And he wrote this order very clearly, as you can see it on the agenda, as if he's saying that the city council up until now hasn't followed the law, right? He says, so henceforth shall follow this law, as if they haven't in the past, indicating some incident. So I would like to ask what incident that is that has happened where we've had some kind of accusation against a municipal employee or a city councilor where that has had to been brought into executive session. Some really serious things could happen here. So, for example, the DOJ report with the police department, where police officers, municipal employees, their character and reputation were brought up, right? The specific things were brought up on the council floor by members of the public. Are those things going to be taken offline into executive session? Is an accusation against the city councilor in some capacity from another city councilor going to be taken offline into executive session? Now, the mayor has spoken about this multiple times, that the council rule that he had proposed and was voted on by this council body, which is about decorum, that you can't talk about the person or personalities. You have to avoid personalities in. I contend, and I've said this to Tom many times on this show, that rule is unconstitutional. It is unconstitutional to not allow people to talk about each other on the council floor. Now, making threats is the line of demarcation. Making an accusation is not necessarily something you don't want. What it does is it opens you up to potential litigation, right? So if I'm a counselor, Tom's a counselor, and I decide I want to accuse him, then Tom can sue me for defamation if it's not true. But it doesn't mean I can't say it. It doesn't mean I can't say it. It doesn't mean that it has to be hidden from public view. And I think that we need to, as a group of people, really watch this particular order to see who votes for this. Because if they vote for it, it is definitively a suppression of important public knowledge that should be being discussed on the council floor. We need to know if a municipal employee, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to know by name, but we should know when there's accusations against them, or in this particular case, a declining in mental health or physical character. in this specific case, if we use President Biden, that means that President Biden's clearly declining mental acuity that we watched over his term would have been completely hidden from the public view, which, by the way, they try to do anyways. But also President Trump, who also has had some weird things that he says, right? We wouldn't be able to talk about that. So if a city councilor had those same issues, we wouldn't be able to talk about that. That's not good at all. We should be able to, as constituents and voters and taxpayers, know what our leaders are doing and what they're going through. And yeah, if they do have declining mental health, they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there. There was an example of a representative in Texas. I don't know if you follow this story, Tom, but she was in a nursing home for like 8 months. Like 8 months. And she was still a voting member of Congress for 8 months. And they didn't tell, no one ever told anybody. You know what I mean? No one ever told them. And so that kind of stuff is the stuff that we really, really need to know. And so I intend to go and speak against this order, and I intend to let the councilors know. I think it really opens up the city council and the city to a significant lawsuit, because if they vote for this, Tom, they know, and I believe Councilor Bergman knows, that there is a bunch of cases that have said that this is the wrong way to interpret this law. And it would open them up to a lawsuit based on deliberate indifference. If anybody wants to know what deliberate indifference is, we can go into a long explanation, but basically it means that you know the law, you know the case, you know what's going to happen, and you still go against it anyways. And I think that Councilor Bergman may be leading us down that path. You know, I think Mo is an okay guy. I don't always agree with him, but I really, really am concerned about what this is and what this means and why it's coming from him. I'm really concerned about that.
Yeah, it's I imagine it is sort of reactionary to allegations made on the floor about Councilor Carlson using a slur for trans people, and questioning another councilor and their story of being a refugee and immigration. And that all played out on the floor. And you know what? As it should.
It should, exactly. I 100% agree with you, Tom, that conversation would have been taken offline. I think this is an attempt by Councilor Bergman, and I am solidly convinced that this is being done by the majority to try to figure out a way to weasel out of having to have these conversations in front of their constituents in a public session.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, and you know, I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. City council has very little power. Its mandate is to do two things: pass ordinances, which it refuses to give itself the ability to write on their own. So they rely on the administration, which to me is a very, very clear violation of separation of powers. It is there to approve the budget that it cannot meaningfully amend, and it is there to hire and fire the city manager, and that's it. Anything beyond that is really for show.
That's really a scary thing, Tom, because then what we end up having is a situation where, you know, we really don't have a representative government in a democracy, right? And that our city does not represent us, and so we are operating in a space in our city where we're not receiving the same rights as other people around the country. Our representative government is supposed to be responsive to us, and they're supposed to listen to the will of the people. Now, again, I know I've been very critical of the voting electorate, but it's up to you now. Are you going to hold people for these are obvious things right in your face? You have sitting city councilors and the mayor just straight up slapping you in the face with these clear attempts to suppress your speech and to suppress your access to what they do. Why? What do they have what's planned? Is there another developer coming along? You're going to build another apartment building or something somewhere? I mean, what's going on that they feel this way? And then they think that this is the right approach. Why can't we have these discussions in public? Why? Why can't we talk about them? What is it that's so bad about questioning people's decision making at the public level? I don't know, Tom, but I do see that we clearly have a majority on the city council today that is against public discussion. They do not want to have these conversations. They get offended anytime you question them, and then they make maneuvers like this that very, very, very much so look like they're trying to limit public participation with their actions and things going on. Just to give one more example, what happens if there was a firefighter, right, who was suffering from significant disability and was being allowed to participate as a firefighter? We all think firefighters are great public servants, right? We all care about them. We all want them to be safe. But what happens if there was something like that was hidden, and then there was some accident that led to something? Wouldn't that be something the public has an interest in? Of course it does. And so why would we hide that? Now I get it, personal stuff, you don't want to be in the public's eye and those kind of things. I get that. Doesn't mean that it has to be discussed by name, but it definitely should at minimum be discussed by position. The public has a right to know all of these things and to be involved with them. These folks are working for the public. They don't work for this anonymous body called Worcester. It's actually, they work for us. We are the voters and the taxpayers. They are our employees. And so they should be responsive to us.
Yeah, I mean, and this unwillingness to talk about stuff, I mean, this I think is really an instrumental piece of the discussion about what do we do about the police department. Is nobody's talking about it. And when we have these, the only time it really comes up is when we have these lawsuits, and then the city says, well, we can't discuss pending litigation until the litigation is over. Then they just no comment it.
Right.
And we never have this review of what actually happened. And as we talked about last week, the Nat Cosenza case is a perfect example to do that. I mean, according to the police department, those officers involved in that did nothing wrong.
Right.
And if you read the internal investigation, they did nothing wrong according to them. And then we have a civil jury that said they did a whole bunch of things wrong. And whose job is it to figure out which one was right and which investigation was lacking? And what's the actual truth here? And how does that inform how we move forward with the police department with these people who have civil jury found manipulated evidence? That's a very serious accusation. And I can guarantee to you that any one of these people on city council, if one of their loved ones, a kid, a sibling, whoever it might be, was under investigation, and one of these people were investigating it, well, first, this is Worcester, and then one of their siblings or family members wouldn't be investigated. But let's pretend like like they would. They'd be outraged. They would be outraged.
No, not just outraged. It would be by the way, it would be instantaneously in the Telegram and Gazette. It would be instantaneously on all the local channels, and it would be you just hear like a drumbeat for these things, and there would be no questioning it too. If you question it, God forbid, because you would be then questioning a hero of Worcester in some capacity. But we would never hear it. Here's the thing, Tom. They'll throw shade at a jury decision here, and at the same time, right in front of your faces, go on the news or go on local thing and then say that what President Trump is doing, who, by the way, regularly questions judicial decisions all the time, thereby undermining the judiciary, that what he's doing is wrong. So if what he's doing is wrong, right? If we're going to hold that dude up as like an example for how we criticize government, and by the way, criticize the dude away, the mayor and the city manager and the police department undermining that jury decision, isn't that the same thing? They're saying that the jury was wrong? Are they saying that the investigation was bad? But why did we give money then? Why is my taxpayer dollars going to something that might be a questionable decision? Right? And I mean, you're like, why would that happen? The logic isn't logicking. The math isn't mathing. They're doing openly contradictory things right in front of us every single day. We deserve a right to know what really happened to that young man who had a dog set on him from behind, the dog was encouraged to continue to bite him after he was subdued, which is why there was a civil penalty, because the young man was already controlled, and there's and then the police officer lied about it on the police report. Again, this is public record, folks. This isn't something we're making up. You can
Still working.
Right. You can go and see the original report and the redacted version. It's still available, and then openly they're telling you to your face that it didn't happen, Tom. It's mind-boggling.
Right. And there's no, like, these things. Okay, these things have happened, and those decisions have been made, and there may be legal ramifications to try and go back and undo it. Whatever. I don't know the answer there, but let's say that that's the excuse. But I see no indication that this behavior is going to change.
Right.
There's been no path laid out how this is going to be different in the future. Because and I don't think they're going to lay one out, frankly. I don't think they don't know yet how or what. I think they're doing what they've always done, which is wait for it to go away.
And then when you wait for it to go away, again,
it repeats itself.
Yeah,
but they're more than happy to spend other people's money to settle their lawsuits, so they can, to protect themselves politically from the details of these things becoming public. That's really what's going on. Is they're really more than happy to spend other people's money to ensure that the details of these things don't come out and are politically difficult for them.
Right, because there might be someone related somewhere who might have their name brought up in public, and we can't do that, right? We're not allowed to talk about, people within this elite kind of community, even though they may have done something wrong. And by the way, I mean, what's wrong with holding people accountable? Again,
no, accountability is good for other people,
but it's not good for them. Which, by the way, leads to frustration and other people lashing out. When accountability is not evenly applied, you end up having violence. You end up having all kinds of conflict among groups because accountability is not even-handed. And I'm a person who, by the way, I was held accountable for my behavior as a young man, and I should have been, because I was doing wrong things, and I rightfully received, the consequences of my actions, and I do not regret what I received. In fact, it was probably, and I've said this in other forums and other ways, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it made me have to be accountable, not just to the world and the greater thing, but I had to start being accountable to myself, which, by the way, changes the way you view things. Like, am I doing this right? Am I saying this right? Am I operating correctly? And then you have to care about other people. And in this case, it looks like there's only a small group of people that they care about. But then when someone, like, go back to the original thing that we talked about, when another small group of people would like to have their thing cared about, we stomp that down. Why? It doesn't make sense. You're just not being logical. And again, when are the voters going to hold them accountable for this, Tom? When are they going to do it? When are they going to? And I'm not talking about, everybody likes to blame that, not a lot of people vote. Okay, would you want to participate in this system? Probably not. But the same people who will vote and be so celebratory for the same group of power over and over again, they whine all day long about the conditions of the streets, economic opportunities in Worcester, the fact that we don't have anything going on downtown, the lack of grocery stores, the way the roads are structured, school choice, yada, 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 yada. They still complain about everything. They're not enjoying their life here. By the way, every time you vote in the same group of people, you're going to get the same results. So start voting differently. Start holding them accountable. You're going to see me at every single one of these public debates this year, going and trying my best to ask questions or influence the questions that are being asked to be more specific to specific situations and hold them accountable. Because if you don't, they won't.
And some councilors won't put themselves in situations where they have to take questions.
Yeah.
Certainly won't meet with some media entities, like ones that ask them real questions. This guy.
They're definitely not letting me ask him no questions.
You can go back to last year or the last municipal election and see. I interviewed everybody that would talk to me that was eligible, that had made the ballot for the primaries, and you can see who didn't respond to my emails and calls.
It is what it is.
Yep.
It is what it is.
And so this is going to be a recurring theme. You're going to hear probably weekly me talking about how they're not doing anything about the police department. Anything. How much more data and information and testimony and evidence do you need before you're going to do something? Do something.
Well, before we do something, we need a report on how to do something. Can we ask the
Yeah.
city?
We need a report on if the ruling of a civil jury was a big lie. Fine, do the report.
Yeah, show us how.
Compare. Let's do it, and then maybe one of our city leaders can get in front of a microphone, God forbid, that isn't on the council floor, and talk about what they learned in this investigation. But and as far as you mentioned a while back, I forgot about lies being told on the council floor. But that's because the city council doesn't administer any oaths under the penalty of perjury because it doesn't have that right, because our city charter is a piece of garbage.
That's right.
But
so you can get
any movement on that has been killed in MLO, in the Municipal and Legislative Operations Committee.
You cannot in any way, shape, or form hold anybody accountable. They can get up and lie, and the only thing that would be even lightly given to them is maybe the court of public opinion. But the powers that be over the last 40 years, they assume, and they've been right now for 4 or 5 decades running, that you're not going to do anything about it. Your public opinion will shift, and it'll go on to whatever the next thing is, whether it's the Super Bowl or Kendrick Lamar calling Drake a pedophile or whatever. You will go away from what you want to do. You know what I mean? They won't. My brain just completely turned off. Anyways, they just won't hold each other accountable unless you do it. And so that's it. That is what it is.
So I just this is great from Shawnee. This is great. Send it to MLO. I mean, I don't even know why the city council has committees. It doesn't, the council itself doesn't do anything. It doesn't really have much ability to do anything. Committees have even less. I mean, Economic Development Committee does some stuff, but I mean, it always comes up, yes. But, I mean, look, I guess that's overstated. There are committees that do substantive work and bring the result of that work back to council, and, and that's good. I mean, I think most notably is economic development on some of these TIF deals or whatever, which often come up. Yes, let's just give them money. But, nonetheless, there is some study that goes into that. And on bigger issues, there is some study that goes into them. But I mean, in general, just an order that gets set there and they look at it, like crime stats, for example. We can't have we have to table a citizen resolution that the Public Safety Committee have hearings, do some sort of investigation into systematic racism in the police department, or systemic rather racism in the police department, and we have to be embarrassed to look at that every single week on the tabled items because, and I quote, we have a municipal public safety meeting coming up, but we have crime stats to look at. Okay, well, that takes you 35 seconds. I guess if you only take orders that take 35 seconds, that's why you can have a meeting every 17 years.
Yeah, I mean, so then again, this goes back to we brought up the point about them being a part-time and whether or not they can prepare and all the time that's involved with it. But in this particular case, almost all of the municipal committees, subcommittees related to the city council, they do not meet on a regular basis. But the same
monthly, mostly.
Most of them mostly, right? But they
traffic and parking every week.
Yeah, but most of them don't meet weekly, and so even the additional assignments that they've been given, right? They don't always operate them to the fullness. By the way, it's up to the committee chairman to schedule them, whether it's weekly or monthly, right? That's up to that, or quarterly, or once a year in some cases, or
never.
Once every 18 months. You know what I mean? The thing that really strikes me about that is that they're making the determination that they either don't have anything to talk about, or that they can handle all the things for that particular term within those meetings that they're having. So then it begs the question: should those subcommittees that aren't meeting that often exist? right? Do they serve a purpose? Because obviously then they use up city resources, whether it's electricity or whatever, staffers that have to be there. Should they be happening if they're not going to meet? What are they doing? Again, when will they be held accountable for the things that they don't do and the things that they do do? And that
Yep.
was just an opportunity for me to say do on live Facebook TV. Bro, you got an itchy nose tonight, bro. You good?
I know. I know. I do this thing where, like, if there's anything anything abnormal, I then jam on my face, especially. I then jam my finger in it until I make it much, much worse. It's a really good thing. It's called psychosis mixed with OCD. So yeah, so there's that. There's our weekly rant on council is useless in the city. And then again, it is not, the members of city council, regardless of how I feel about their politics, the vast majority of I enjoy as human beings quite a bit. I don't because I disagree with people.
Have their own show.
They might be there. So I may, regardless of how I feel about people's politics, I generally, those that I've gotten to know, which is most of them, they're good people that want to serve. But we have structural issues here, especially that they're part-time and have such massive districts, the district councils, that stand in the way of anything really of any substance getting done most of the time.
10 district councilors. Sorry.
I like 9, but that's beside the point. I like 9 and 4. And I think there is a role for at-large councils to play, but it does not need to be the majority of the council. And by the way, we're the only city that does that, unless they're all at large. Like Cambridge, all of their councils are at large. But of those that have both at large and district councilors, we're the only one that I'm aware of, certainly in the top 10 most populous cities in the state, to have more at large than district. I wonder why you do that. Oh, because you want white people to be in charge. Anyway,
yeah, taking shots, Tom. There you go.
I mean, look, it was 1985. It was the area of pre-authoritarianism, right? We were all waving our flags very hard because the symbolism of the conservative revolution. Woo, flags, kill all the middle class people. Or let's starve all the middle class people to death. Starve them all. But flags. We love America. We just hate its people. So it happened in a moment in time, right? And
that comment does not represent the views of This Week in Worcester. It's just a comment that Tom was making in a sarcastic way, and it did not actually represent an opinion that This Week in Worcester or the podcast represents in any way, shape, or form.
No, it was actually very deliberate. What has happened to the middle class since the tax cuts in 1982? I'll wait.
I'll dismiss it. By the way,
middle class is actually getting smaller as a percentage.
By the way, we're currently counter-programming the most, apparently, according to an online poll, the most boring Super Bowl of the last 20 years, according to an online poll that's currently being conducted. It's winning against all the other Super Bowls. So, by the way, come over here and watch This Week in Worcester. Get your friends to come and join because we're about to talk about some fun stuff, man. You guys missed out. Or watch this later on because the Super Bowl is boring. The Eagles are apparently stomping the Chiefs relentlessly right now.
Are they really?
Yeah. It's 37-6 right now.
Oh, my God.
With 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
My guess is that Saquon has about 972 yards and 17 touchdowns.
From what I can see, he's not having I see Jalen Hurts has 70 yards rushing.
Well, they can't have them. I don't know. Whatever.
A lot of field goals.
So yeah, I mean, I don't, when things get super pop, like when you're talking about the most watched thing on television all year long, it just immediately makes me not want to watch it. I just don't want
to. Yeah, I kind of stopped watching the Super Bowl a few years ago. it's really hard to listen to some of our younger folks talk about like crash commercialism and capitalism, and then stare at commercials for 4.5 hours. It's like,
Oh, but
and
they're
then
good ones this time.
huh?
But they're good ones this time.
Oh, they're good ones. Oh, so of the first, like, I did see a few of the ones at the beginning. I was checking it out on my phone to see like how it looks. It's amazing the technology, how it looks on the phone. But all the new commercials mostly were AI generated in some capacity, and so all the film folk that I know were protesting in various ways about the AI generated commercials, because commercial space is often where film folks make money in the off season in between movies being filmed. So all my movie friends are pissed off at the commercials. So no one's happy with the Super Bowl this year.
Interesting. 37 to 6 with 8 minutes left. That's over. So yeah, and you said you had something. Is that you want to touch on Super Bowl? But I thought you had something else.
Not really the Super Bowl, but what I wanted to talk about is the Hall of Fame vote that just took place this past week. I don't know if anybody saw that. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, and the reason I want to talk about the Hall of Fame in general is Hall of Fames in sports are the worst. They either let in too many people or they don't let in the right people, and they're just terrible. I could literally do 55 shows on the Baseball Hall of Fame and why it sucks in so many different ways, but it doesn't matter. I'm not going to do that. We're talking about football. And so Adam Vinatieri was eligible to be elected into the Hall of Fame for the first time, the greatest kicker in the history of football, just with his career with the Patriots, let alone what he did with the Colts. And the bias of the old football writers against kickers prevented this guy from being a first ballot Hall of Famer. And it just and Sterling Sharp, who by the way was a great receiver. I don't want to take anything away from Sterling Sharp during his day, but he had a
Sterling Sharp was the man.
Huh? He was the man.
Sterling Sharp was the man.
He was unbelievable. He probably should have been in the Hall of Fame like 10, 15 years ago, but because he had a shortened career and then like different people that were coming up, it kind of like prevented him. Now he got in late. So, but because he got in, Adam Vinatieri didn't get in, and it just shows the backward nature of those things. Again, backroom decisions. Vinatieri's going to get in, by the way. He'll get in next year or the year after or whatever. But they said, oh, we would prefer to put in a guy who we forgot about because we were racist 20 years ago, right? And right, because like I don't even tell you about the white wide receivers that are in the Hall of Fame that should not be, but it doesn't matter. But let's just focus on the facts at hand, right? And we're gonna keep the kicker that was the greatest kicker of all time, and it just brings up the state of the Patriots. I can't help but talk about it, and the abject failure of Robert Kraft to be a good owner, despite having the greatest kicker of all time, the greatest coach of all time, and the greatest quarterback of all time all fall into his lap at the same time. And he managed not to maximize it. They won a bunch of Super Bowls, but they probably should have won like 5 or 6 more. But because of the bad management of Robert Kraft, who skates around here, skates, it blows my mind. The criticism that like Delonte West would get for the Celtics, but Robert Kraft is doing the stuff that he's doing, but no one says anything. It just boggles my mind how athletes are. We are so racist in New England. It's just ridiculous. But in this case, it was just a really bad decision. And even though I think Sterling Sharp should be in the Hall of Fame, I think he was great. He only played a short amount of time, but he was
a neck injury, I think.
It was a neck injury, but he only played for eight and a half seasons, and he hurt his neck in the middle of that last season. But he was the most, at the time, dominant, wide receiver that I think I had seen outside of Jerry Rice, who was not as physical like Sterling Sharp. Sterling Sharp used to brutalize the defensive backs, and it was just unbelievable. The only guy that I ever saw close to him was Ben Coates, and Ben Coates was a tight end. And so, just used to mangle the defenders, and he was so good. And so he definitely deserves to be in, but he should have been in 20 years ago. But the Pro Football Hall of Fame doesn't know how to do their job. So I just wanted to mention that to our viewers. Maybe that'll attract a little extra sports fans to our side, and they'll stick with us.
You're such a homer. You're such a homer. You're seriously going to complain about a kicker when When Eli Manning didn't get in, and Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowls standing on his head.
Eli should be in too. By the way, don't put me in the Patriots whiner categories, right? The Patriots fans online that are rooting against the Chiefs because they don't want Patrick Mahomes to like touch Brady's things. It's nonsensical nonsense, right? So Eli Manning 100% should be in the Hall of Fame, and he should be in the Hall of Fame alone on the fact that he beat Brady in the biggest game in the history of football. That's it. Just that one, and he did it while yes, he had 53 defenders trying to drag him down, and he still threw the ball, and it still stuck to David Tyree's head. It doesn't matter. He gets in the Hall of Fame on that, but then you add in the other Super Bowl and by the way, he played for 17 years. He was a long quarterback. He played in the toughest market. For you Boston folks, I'm from Boston. We are not the toughest market. It's New York. He played in the toughest market in sports, and he won for years and years and years for a Giants franchise that pretty much between the late 80s and when Eli Manning got there was moribund at best, right? It wasn't, it was sometimes they made the playoffs. Most of the times they just kind of were mediocre until he got there.
Oh, and Reggie Wayne gets snubbed too. Reggie Wayne was the man.
Another one who should be in the Hall of Fame. Again, dude, the anti-Colts bias is big in the Hall of Fame because they don't like the owner of the Colts, which is just annoying. It's like, all right, you don't like the owner.
I do like Antonio Gates getting in because Antonio Gates was after TG was the redefinition of the tight end position.
If you think about it, Antonio Gates, if he didn't play, you never would have saw a Gronk or a Travis Kelce, because Gronk himself has said when he was in high school, he saw Antonio Gates play, and that made him want to play tight end. And up until that point, he had just been an offensive tackle. And so we would have never had two of the greatest tight ends of all time without Antonio Gates. He changed the position and made it into a more elite offensive position. So,
well, I think that was Tony Gonzalez, but regardless, TG was the man. But yes, no, I will fully agree, and I'll just wedge my own personal. I'm going to take a left turn here a little bit. Hall of Fames are absolutely stupid, and the best example of that is, and let me say it loud and clear for everyone in the back, the greatest hitter that baseball has ever seen got snubbed from the Hall of Fame. So that's what Hall of Fames were. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, no, I mean the fact that Barry Bonds is not in the Hall of Fame is just. The fact that there was some people who didn't vote for Ichiro this year.
It was only one. It was only one. It was one voter.
That person should immediately lose their job.
Lose their job? I was thinking more like executed, but okay. I can go with lose their job.
I don't want to hurt people, Tom. I don't want to execute them. I don't mind them losing their jobs, but executing them is a little maybe too far for.
No, I think if we vote to execute them, because I mean all the the very religious folks that are pro capital punishment, right? Isn't it because like somebody voted or something, so that makes it okay to kill people?
Yeah, I don't believe in that at all. I don't know how you can be pro-life and be for capital punishment. It doesn't make any sense. To me, if you're for life, you should be for life at all stages, and it doesn't matter whether someone is unborn or born. You should want to protect it at all costs and protect opportunities for it. And also that means that. By the way, that means there's some really tough decisions that have to be made sometimes. For example, when a mother is on the table and her life is threatened because of the birth process that she's going through, you have to make a decision on whether or not to protect her life. And so Christians inserting themselves into that conversations, at least public ones, are doing a disservice to our faith again, because then you get questioned about the person who's on death row, and all of a sudden you become vengeance, right? You're Batman in that moment. It's like, I am vengeance. Like, okay, you don't make any sense. You make no sense. So, and by the way, again, you're contradicting your own faith, because the Bible says that vengeance only belongs to God. So in that case, we should protect life at all costs. And when someone dies, they can go and face God on their own terms, not my terms. I'm not God. You're not God. So why would I be someone who wants to hold that person accountable? And again, mercy has to exist in the same world that justice does. You can't have one without the other. And so you like justice without any mercy makes justice nothing. It makes it nothing. So it's pointless. And so I reject that as a position that you should take. I applaud President Biden for commuting the sentences of almost every person facing a death sentence, and I repudiate President Trump for his proclamation to kill as many people as possible. How does that, and even and just the very concept of us seeing people locked up, and that's justice. That's not justice. It's not justice at all. Justice is having to face the things that you did and be held accountable. Just like we're trying to hold the city council accountable. If you do commit a crime, you should have to be faced with the consequences of it, which means deal with the element of facing your accuser, deal with the element of being exposed in front of your family and exposed in front of your friends for the things that you did wrong. Accountability involves public discourse about the things that you've done wrong. I know from personal experience, and it is the right thing that people should have to do.
Fair enough. And just for update, Saquon's only 25-57. So he's not on
5 minutes. It's 40-6 right now. This is an absolute but you can continue to join the This Week in Worcester podcast, where we will never be as boring as a 40-6 blowout in the Super Bowl. We will totally always provide you with exciting times, especially the last part of the show, Tom, which is almost here.
I will just add that this is very niche, and then we'll go to your favorite part of the show. There was a play earlier this football season, and if you haven't seen it, even if you don't like football, and I don't watch the football much anymore, just so you know.
The football.
But I'm just over it. I just get moved on. I watch a lot of hoop. I watch some hoop. I watch some hockey. But I don't watch the football anymore. But Saquon Barkley is the running back for the apparently going to be champion Philadelphia Eagles. He jumped over a dude. First of all, he jumped over a human being. A human being paid to tackle him, paid millions of dollars to tackle him. And he didn't just jump over him, but he hurdled him backwards. So he was in the middle of a spin, and then he jumped because he was like going to spin, and he was like, "Wait, I'm going to die if I continue to spin." So then he just jumped over the dude backwards. He was faced the wrong way and jumped over a man. He was faced the wrong way and jumped over a man. It was absurd. But even if you don't care about athletically, it's obnoxiously ridiculous. But you need to look on YouTube for a video about reactors reacting to Saquon Barkley's reverse hurdle. Do people lose that? Like, they're watching it in real time, doing the reaction thing to the game. They're watching the game. And when he does it, like, I'm not even going to describe it because there's a lot of curse words and a lot of, quote unquote street language. But it's absolutely hysterical to watch people. They lose their minds, as they should. Because if you're watching that line, you're going, one guy pulls up his green screen and just leaves the room. He's like, "I'm done. I'm over it." No, that didn't really happen. So it's good stuff. It's a good laugh.
And before we go to the favorite part of the show for everybody, just to mess with some of the Patriots fans in the chat, if Patrick Mahomes does manage to come back from 40-6 with 3 minutes left, yeah, he's better than Brady. So I just want to say that out loud.
I got news for you, folks. I got news for you. He's going to end up being. He's going to be the one by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, and why do people get offended by that? Like, who cares? That happens all the time in sports. There's eventually someone comes along better than the guy that is your guy. Who cares? Doesn't mean anything. Doesn't mean Brady wasn't great. By the way, also a weirdo. But it doesn't mean
obnoxious human being.
Obnoxious. He's literally a snake oil salesman. Literally. And they love him. I'm like, what? What are you talking about? This dude literally.
I do give him credit though for doing that roast. The Netflix roast was hysterical.
Oh yeah, good for him. Yeah, he's able to be made fun of, which is pretty cool. By the way, I give Belichick credit. Rocket is almost, what is she? Got to be almost 50 years younger than him. Girlfriend taking her to all the public places. Hey, he's facing the crowd. So what are you gonna say when someone wants to go and take the public criticism? It is what it is, right?
Yeah, right, yeah. Tough. There's a couple good podcasts out there. What is it? Edelman and Gronk have a podcast.
Yeah, they're funny.
But
it's not as good as the This Week in Worcester podcast.
No, it's a far second. But there's some good stuff anyway. What I'm saying is there's some podcasts out there from like former players and stuff that are now retired, and the stories coming out about Belichick, just like the way he would talk privately or whatever, the way he would treat people when they screwed up, or like it's some pretty hilarious stuff.
Yeah, apparently he's a funny dude. So that's pretty cool. All right, so since it's Super Bowl Sunday, and we've already talked about favorite rappers, right? So we can't do because obviously Kendrick Lamar was the halftime person, and we can't really talk about food, right? So, but what we can, what has begun because the Royal Rumble was last weekend, is the road to WrestleMania. And so the road to WrestleMania has begun, Tom. Which, of course, the next step on the road to WrestleMania, because this is wrestling is your favorite subject, is the Elimination Chamber. And so my question for you, Tom Marino, is who is your favorite wrestler of all time?
Gonna go with Mr. Callahan because I just like him as a dude. He also has a podcast. He was the Mark Callahan, the Undertaker. He also has a podcast which is fantastic. It's really good. It's really good.
It is really good.
Just kind of the interesting insights into how the business works, and a lot of they have a lot of guests would and most of the stories are not self-aggrandizing. They're stuff that happened behind the scenes, whatever. It's good stuff. So I'm gonna just because I like the dude that he is, I'm gonna go with Mark Callahan. I was young when Hogan first dropped, so that was my thing when I was young. But I've stepped away from. I stepped away from
the comments, man. Oh man,
the comments is something else. So yeah, I stepped away from the wrestling a long time ago. But I was into it, when I was a kid. Me and my dad's thing, and so I was young when Hogan really popped. So Hogan was my thing, but also was into WCW land, and the Sting, Ric Flair stuff. That era before they were both 100 years old and still trying to pretend to wrestle was fantastic. Flair is the greatest performer that's ever came out of that, for sure.
Sting was amazing. I don't care what anybody says. Flair wasn't really a wrestler. He was just the best showman, really, for a long time. So mine's definitely it's Shawn Michaels. It's the Heartbreak Kid. He was, to me, the best. He was at one point the best face, and at another point the best heel of all time. So he had the balanced career. I don't know that the Undertaker ever was a real heel. And so I always, and Hogan had one decent turn as a heel, but then it kind of fell off a little bit. A lot of people, I would say of the modern wrestlers, I really, really like Jey Uso. I think that he's a great face. I just don't know what he would look like as a real heel. So I like to see the two versions. I think that that's a cool thing. When Cody Rhodes goes rogue, because it's definitely, they're setting it up for one of the biggest ones of all time. I wonder how big it'll be, because his dad, I love Dusty Rhodes too, but it's definitely Jey Uso. Bret Hart was great. And Vince McMahon just really didn't handle a lot of things well, and obviously he was a weirdo too. So we had a lot of stuff. I love Paul Levesque and what he's done with WWE over the past few years. I like the other leagues too. I'm not someone who's an only WWE guy, but obviously the two biggest circuits for many, many years were WWF and WCW. So most of the very famous wrestlers went there. But right now I kind of like Joe Hendry in TNA, and then he was in Next a little while ago. That guy's hilarious. He sang a song the other day about him being the champion, and basically the line in the song is "Everything is terrible except Joe Hendry."
Yeah, it's I'm kind of weird about it. I wouldn't watch an episode of wrestling for just no interest. But some of the behind the scenes stuff, the stuff about either talking about how they work together, I find that fascinating. The business part of it, I find fascinating. But sitting there and watching those dudes perform, not going to happen. No.
To answer Sean's comment, he said Uso. He was talking about the Usos when they were heels, but that was when they were tag team guys. I want to see Jey Uso turn the main event Jey Uso. I would like to see what this guy looks like as a heel, as a solo guy. This could be really cool at some point, especially if they turn on Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns, yes, he's a dominant physical dude, but also one of the more boring wrestlers of all time. It's always the same.
They've been trying to make that guy a star for so long, and it just won't happen. People just don't like him.
No, it's it's hard to like. And there's some wrestlers that like were buried for a long time, like Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn in TNA, particularly when he was El Generico, was the funniest wrestler I think I ever saw in my life. It was just so good. Kevin Owens is annoying. He does the same shtick. Just he's basically a modern Mick Foley, but just not as good. Just destroys his body constantly. I did watch at the Royal Rumble. I watched the ladder match between him and Cody Rhodes. It was pretty good as far as the how it looks, but some of the gimmicks are kind of very similar, and I like some of the stuff that they do. But also on the women's side, Rhea Ripley, I approve. She's a pretty good champion. Although, but she's funny and she's really skilled, super skilled. I love that. R.I.P. to the great China, who was not treated well by the WWE at all, and is probably the greatest women's wrestler of all time.
I think that's it, kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
We will attempt to screw it up less next week. But as our promo says, we can't possibly screw it up as badly as the city is screwing the last month up. So we do this about people. Yeah, so we do this about 8:35 every Sunday night. Kind of go over the last week, look ahead to the following week, to the week ahead, whatever is kind of in the headline. So please join us. You can thank you for Shawnee and everybody else who participated in the comments. And if we didn't respond to you on anything, sorry. I think we got everything though. So until next week, enjoy. This week in Worcester.
Come to City Council.